Mr. Speaker, thank you for the opportunity to speak on this bill. I'm rising to support this bill in its second reading. I acknowledge the work that member in charge of this bill, Tracy Martin, has done on this bill. I acknowledge the Select Committee, previous Social Services Select Committee, and their work that they did in the past term. I also recognize that Tracy Martin has put a very genuine concern in the form of this bill. This bill is about the clothing allowance entitlement parity for orphaned or unsupported children with foster children. And this bill seeks that clarification, this entitlement clarification through legislation. The purpose of this bill is to increase financial support for kin carers. And Mr. Speaker, I believe that this is really vital because if this financial support is not available, it can lead to inhibition of growth of our children. And this is for any kin carers from unrelated caregivers or family members or grandparents looking after their grandchildren. I also acknowledge the Select Committee's recommendations, recommended amendments. And Mr. Speaker, I was not part of that Select Committee in the past term, but nevertheless, I, like everyone else here in the chamber, I understand the issue of clothing. Because if clothing issue is because of material deprivation, it can lead to psychological impact on psychological state of children, leading to a lot of other problems which can happen because children will be hesitant to socialize. And socialization is very important for children because that helps them acquire a lot of skills that are required throughout their life. This lack of sufficient clothing can create some mental and emotional issues as well. So, Mr. Speaker, that can create some prejudice against children. And sadly, this may not be in their control because this is due to the financial situation of their kin carers. The national government has been actively supporting children through Children's Action Plan. The issue of providing all children with the opportunities for them to succeed is something we all agree on. And just like my colleagues, I want to see all children succeed at all levels. And clothing issue can hold them back. And Mr. Speaker, having been actively involved in the community, I understand the hardships of our community. I also want to acknowledge the work that kin carers do looking after these children in unfortunate circumstances. And their job is an extremely difficult one and one that requires a large amount of empathy to come to some realization of the hardships that one can face and that these children can go through. So, Mr. Speaker, it's really essential that this support is provided to these kin carers so that this support can be passed on to these children in need as they have no control on their situation. Sometimes these responsibilities come unexpectedly, and I remember, Mr. Speaker, during door knocking, during campaigning in the general election, I met this family. These were grandparents very elderly grandparents looking after their 2 grandchildren, and this was because of a tragedy in their son's family. And they had no choice but to look after these children with a very limited income. And Mr. Speaker, these children too need support. They need to be looked after. And the government recognizes the incredible work that family members do to look after these children, those who have lost their parent or parents, or they cannot be looked after if they cannot be looked after by their family, their parents. And more than 12,000 New Zealand children are being cared by wider family members because of death of a parent or a family breakdown. So currently, kin carers are entitled to assistance to help with cost of raising orphaned or unsupported children. In 2009, national insured kin carers get the same weekly amount as foster carers. So, Mr. Speaker, the national government is known for delivering value for money, and national government is already working in that direction, and the national government is already looking at exploring options to see how that $10 million capped fund that was announced that can be utilized to help children in this situation. And so to address that, national government has already set up a ministerial reference group. which is currently working through options for how help can be provided to kin carers in this kind of situation. Extra funding can be applied. This extra 10 million that was announced is to help kin carers additional cost. And this ministerial reference group also has a representative of grandparents looking after grandchildren, so that experience is also there on this ministerial reference group. So they will be providing advice on how best to allocate this funding to help kin carers in similar circumstances. And Mr. Speaker, this national government is always striving to deliver for our communities, and our focus is well-being of our families, and that is a very vital package of our mission. And this is why the minister has asked this ministerial reference group to explore all options to get positive outcomes. And there are other recent initiatives as well taken by the government, and this is to make parenting very practical and possible for grandparents. And it is very important that grandparents are given the assistance that they need to raise these children, because sometimes there is a big gap when grandparents had looked after their children versus when they have to look after these children in their family. So, Mr. Speaker, those kind of assistance will be required. Some special parenting skills are also required. And so to provide that assistance, Work and Income has now assigned a manager at national office to work with grandparents raising grandchildren. So this is like a one-stop place for grandparents to seek the information that they need, and this is really important. Then the time is changing really fast. We know that technology is changing really fast as well, and how we are raising our children, that changes really fast as well. And so it is really important that grandparents are able to catch up with this changing technology, are able to catch up with this new ways of raising our children, and they understand expectations of children. So this monetary support is really important, which is for clothing. And also it is really important, Mr. Speaker, that grandparents learn parenting skills under the current legislation. And it is really important that this kind of training is available to grandparents. And because parenting is a very complex issue, no matter how many children one has raised. Every child is different. They come with their different traits. And so it is a very tricky issue. Therefore, this parenting support is also very important. For this, the government is investing $600,000 a year on a toolbox program that is especially designed for kin carers. And this is a great tool as it provides a refresher course on parenting to grandparents. And this training is facilitated by trained volunteers. And this all is being done to support the incredible work that our kin carers are doing to raise children, those who are in these unfortunate circumstances, not having a parent to live with them and look after them. And Mr. Speaker, I recognize that our children are our future, and that's why national government is so focused on our children. As I said before, there are more than 12,000 children in this situation, and currently kin carers are entitled to assistance to help with the cost of raising orphaned or unsupported children. And along with this entire issue, I feel it is important to provide every child in New Zealand with an equal opportunity at prosperity and happiness. It is essential we focus on our children because they are our future, and they will carry our long-term ideas and hopes of our country. And so in summary, Mr. Speaker, we are already working in the direction to provide additional assistance in areas that this bill seeks to address. And as this bill is in line with our objectives, I support this bill in the second reading. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.